Good afternoon and welcome to the Big Show. The Big Show brought to you every single day, 5 o'clock by, that would be me, Paul Zeise of the Post-Gazette. We are obviously going to wrap up the Steelers debacle on Sunday. First, the Big Show brought to you by FanDuel Casino. We will talk a little bit about all the opportunities you'll have with FanDuel a little bit later in the show. But at the end of the day, not good enough. The Steelers are not good. It's interesting to me just to see how the narrative after games sort of plays out. And what I mean by that is, there are people that have in their mind a certain narrative that no matter what happens in the game, if, they're going to find a way that it fits what they think or what they thought. Okay? If you came away from the game on Sunday, and your number one takeaway is that Aaron Rodgers needed to play as opposed to Mason Rudolph. Well, I don't know what to tell you. The Steelers gave up 31 points to the Bears. Okay, the Steelers offense scored 21, and of course the defense scored 7. So they had 28 points. And I think if you look at what the Steelers allegedly are supposed to be on defense, if there's 28 points on the board for the Steelers, they're supposed to win the game. Mason Rudolph he threw an interception. The strip sack's not on him. Come on. It's amazing how, we people that want to blame him for everything that went wrong will find a way, but the strip sack's not on him. But the interception, let's talk about it. Okay, he throws an interception. The Bears took over at the 43-yard line. Is there some rule in the book that I don't know about or some rule that I'm not sure of that says the Steelers' $170 million defense isn't supposed to be able to allow a 57-yard drive? It's not like he turned it over on the 10. It was the 43 of the Bears. They had to go 57 yards to score a touchdown, which they happily did. Okay, so my point is Aaron Rodgers better than Mason Rudolph? Yeah, okay, I'll concede that. And obviously they would like him to play as much as they can. That's why they brought him. But number one, the version of Mason or the version of Aaron Rodgers that we saw against the Chargers and in the first half against the Bengals wasn't very good. And if that's the version the Steelers are going to get the rest of the way, we might as well forget about it all anyway. But my point is this. When there are a number of people who still, for whatever reason, have this irrational hatred of Mason Rudolph. I don't understand it. All the guy does is keep his mouth shut, play hard, try to be a good teammate. He never embarrasses the Steelers. He never embarrasses the organization. He works hard. He's working with Will Howard to try and get him better. If you don't think he's good enough, okay, he probably isn't. He's a backup. But he's a good enough backup that you should be able to win a few games if he plays. So the idea that somehow not having Aaron Rodgers in the game is why the Steelers lost, you're just trying to look for reasons to blame it on Mason Rudolph or to comfort yourself. The reality is this. Their defense did not play well. This entire season, we have been talking, and the Steelers have been talking about their defense. And, the thing about it is, what is it, $170 million defense, and they keep bringing all these other players in, and they keep talking about how they're this collection of stars. And, before the season, they were talking about how this could be a historic defense and all the other good stuff. And one of the things I hate about this Steelers group, and I mean this in all sincerity, they don't live in reality. They live in some fantasy land where everybody out there still thinks they're the big bad Steelers, that they're the big bad tough Steelers that nobody wants to play because, boy, they're going to come after you. And I'm like looking at it like, what planet are you on that you think that? This is the reality of the Steelers' historic $170 million defense. They give up 365 yards a game. Okay? The good news is that's not the worst in the NFL. The worst The Cowboys give up more, the Giants give up more, the Commanders give up more, the Bengals give up more. So if that makes you feel better, the $170 million defense can say, well, we're better than the Cowboys, Giants, Commanders, and Bengals. They're a little better when you go to scoring defense, right? Points per game, they give up, 26 points a game, something like that, 23.9 points per game. That's only 20th. So there's, at least the number of teams, there 12 teams that are worse than them. The reality is, to me, this is a very, very, very overrated defense. And, it's overrated because we look at and by the way, their passing defense, they are the only pass defense that's worse than theirs is the Bengals. And that's pretty pathetic, but it's the truth. Against the run, I can remember a day when, they would go literally, the Steelers defense would go 20 games in a row without giving up a 100-yard rusher. Now they give up 105 yards a game. I mean, it right on the ground. And the only reason it's not more is because teams just said, hey, we can throw all day against this team. And the bottom line is you're not supposed to be able to do that, right? Because they've got all these superstars on defense, and they've got the, edge rushers and, their pressure, and they've got, 75 defensive backs who were all pro at one point, it seems like. The bottom line, they're not who they think they are. And because they're not who they think they are, they've become very delusional. Period. I just think that it's one of those things where, we can focus on Mason Rudolph. He's your backup quarterback. And believe me when I say this, look around the league when a team has to play their backup. Did you happen to catch some of the Tampa game last night? Did you happen to see some of that? Because to be honest with you, Tampa played on Sunday Night Football. Baker Mayfield got hurt. Did you happen to watch Jacoby Brissett and that disaster? I mean, I could go through the league and the number of guys. I mean, I guess J.J. McCarthy is a backup in Minnesota, or maybe he's the starter, whatever. Have you caught any of his act? Mason Rudolph is your backup. But he played well enough yesterday that you could have won the game or should have won the game. If your $170 million defense could get stops when they need to get stops. And quite frankly, I'm going to tell you, I think this is now the point in the season where we all know this is where this is headed. They're 6-5. I'm sure they'll, circle the wagons and rally the troops and figure out a way to beat the Bills next week because the Bills are all beat up. The Bills, to me, are, by the way, one of the phoniest teams out there. They are really basically, they've got Superman at quarterback and a bunch of other just 5 guys named Mo everywhere else. And Superman is good enough on many weeks to get them to where they need to get to. And he might just be good enough to outscore the Steelers. But I would assume that because the Steelers lost and they're feeling all butthurt now and they're all focused and ready to go, they'll probably rally it together and they'll beat the Bills. And then the week after that, they'll lose to the Ravens and be, back to where they're at. So to me it's just one of those things where if you really, really look at this team, they're as average as could be. That's what they are. I don't believe for one second that if you played Aaron Rodgers yesterday, it would have made a difference. I just don't. I think Aaron Rodgers is, obviously better than Mason Rudolph, but I didn't see that as the reason they lost the game. I just think that you allowed Caleb Williams to drive the team a couple of times when, your $170 million defense needs to get a stop. Here's the other thing. They basically ran the ball for 186 yards in this game. Okay? But at critical points in the game, they decided they wanted to dink and dunk and throw little short passes. I don't understand it. Kenneth Gainwell literally averaged 9 yards a carry. Now, of course, 55 came on the one play, but still. Jaylen Warren, you know what? He averaged, what would that be? Let's see. He averaged about 4 yards a carry as well. They ran the ball, 36 times. But part of the problem is They run when they're supposed to pass. They pass when they're supposed to run. There is nothing that is creative about this offense at all. There's nothing that makes you guess at this offense at all. There's nothing at all about this offense that makes teams try and figure out how to stop them. And that's what I would tell you is the biggest joke to me. It is the biggest joke to me. It really is. And this idea that, this guy, this is exactly what I'm talking about right here. This guy, RC. They could catch fire. Okay. They could catch fire. They could also catch on fire. I mean, come on, what are we talking about here? I think we know where this is headed. And it's not headed in a good direction. Really isn't. It's one of these things where, I feel like people are looking at the names on the back of the jerseys of the Steelers, and they really believe that they're getting the best of these guys. And what I mean by that is they're looking at, for instance, Cam Hayward and think that he's 5 years younger than he is. Cam Hayward has been okay. He's certainly not a difference maker. He's certainly not going to earn that bonus that he negotiated, by holding out. He's certainly not going to earn that this year. TJ Watt 2 or 3 years ago is a lot different than what TJ Watt looks like right now. But everyone wants to continue to hope. And, every so often he makes a big play and it's like, you see? But it's like there's 60 or 70 defensive snaps in a game. And if he makes 1 or 2 plays, maybe they're big plays, but that's not, he used to absolutely just dominate games. He used to be a guy that showed up on just about every play. And there's some people that believe that he's still that. They still believe Jalen Ramsey 3 years ago. They still believe even Darius Slay 4 years ago, 5 years ago, right? It's not. And, of course, looking at the comments here, it looks like to me there are people that believe that Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers of 4 or 5 years ago. They're not. This is a team that is really, to me, capable of rising up in a given week, and playing well because they've got a lot of veterans who have a lot of pride. They also have a lot of holes in their roster. They also have a lot of guys who haven't experienced winning a whole lot. I think that's the biggest thing. And that, to me, I think is what is the problem with the Steelers. As a whole, the Steelers organization, as a whole, is delusional. They're delusional in what they think they are. They're delusional in how good they think they are. They're delusional in the fact that they just don't have I don't even know what the word I'm looking for, but they don't have that, not charisma, but they don't have that it factor that they used to have as an organization. But when they had the it factor is when they had players who could make plays. Their defense had an it factor because they had a bunch of guys that were out there looking to knock somebody in the next week, and they were good at it. You didn't run on them. You didn't pass on them. You didn't play against them. And if you stepped, maybe out of line a little bit, you were likely to get your ass kicked. This group talks like that, but they're not that. Nobody's afraid of this group. Nobody cares about this group. I mean, I'm glad Jalen Ramsey moved to safety because at least there's one guy out there that might want to go lower the boom on somebody from time to time. But to me, it feels like, the Steelers organization as a whole is very delusional because the Steelers organization as a whole, they still are convinced that if they can just sort of slop their way to, a 9-8 season, or whatever, that they're going to win a playoff game. Yeah, we're going to win a playoff game, or two, and maybe even get to the Super Bowl. All you got to do is get into the playoffs. The Steelers organization is delusional enough to believe that, Mike Tomlin figured it out in 2008. They won a Super Bowl and got back to one in 2010. He hasn't forgotten to coach over the last 16 years. And yeah, he hasn't won a playoff game in 8 years, but it's going to happen. We just got to keep doing the things we're doing. I mean, what are we talking about here? It's absolutely absurd to me. So I feel like that's where we're at. And it's just one of the things. It is going to be, in so many ways, a hard off season, because I think they're going to have to really take a look at themselves in the mirror. And I think that, honestly, like I said, they'll probably pull it together, slop together some kind of win against the Bills, then lose to the Ravens. Then who do they got next after that? I think they'll beat the Browns, and then, they'll lose to the Lions, and then they'll beat the Dolphins or whatever. But the reality is, I mean, this team is just basically very much over, a little above average. And a lot of what they predicate, what they want to do, especially on defense, is, well, we're going to let our superstars cook. Well, you know what? I don't know if they're good enough to cook anymore like they used to. Period. They don't want them to. And that's really what happens. In my mind, that's what we're talking about. It's really, really, really a team that, in so many ways, it is going to be very disappointed probably at the end of the year again. And then we're going to go through the whole nonsensical offseason where, we've got to find a quarterback, and who are they going to get, and who are they going to draft, and, we're going to hear about, I don't even know who the top, all the top quarterbacks basically stunk this year in college, so I don't even know who would be the number one pick overall and all the other good stuff. But it's like one of these things where I just think it's crazy to me. It really is. It's crazy. And so now what? Now what is next? I mean, I don't know, but I know this. If you're waiting for this team, to magically, find this, this dust you can throw on it. And I will tell you, it's not going to happen. I just don't see it. I think they're good enough to continue to do what they're doing, which is win 1 week, lose 1 week, right? Win 1 week, lose 1 week. I got this guy here who's going on and on about how Mason Rudolph was directly responsible for 3 turnovers, which is incredible since they only had 2. And that's what I'm talking about. He's clearly somebody who, just hates Mason Rudolph. That's what happens. That's what I'm talking about, narratives. They only turned it over twice. One was a strip sack. Wasn't his fault. And the interception, okay, yes, there were points off a turnover there. Guess what? The defense let the other team go 57 yards. So, give me a break. If you punted the ball from the 5-yard line, they'd probably take it over at like the 45 or 45-yard line. Guess what? It's the same exact thing. Come on, man. My whole thing with the story out of yesterday's game, maybe they win with Aaron Rodgers. Maybe they don't. If you get the version of Aaron Rodgers that they got in the Chargers game, they don't win. In fact, it's not even that close. That's what people are just trying to ignore. The fact that the version of Aaron Rodgers that we've seen recently is not the same as he was early in the season. Now, maybe he gets better. Maybe he doesn't. But this team's got a lot of problems. And let's talk about this. I saw a stat today. George Pickens has more receiving yards than all of the Steelers receivers combined. Now, listen, I've heard all kinds of reasons for this today. My favorite is, that's because he's in a different kind of offense. Well, what does that tell you about the Steelers offense? What does that tell you that the Steelers offense should be? We've talked about Arthur Smith how many weeks in a row? Maybe, just maybe, right? Maybe, just maybe, Arthur Smith's offense stinks. And if I was a receiver, I wouldn't want to play here either. But it's just one of those things where I just have to say, if the reason that the Steelers receivers don't have a lot of yardage is because, the offense, maybe we should take a look at the offense again. But the reality is the offense is what Mike Tomlin wants. That's what they want. Mike Tomlin wants a very conservative offense that, punts the ball when they need to punt it, that doesn't take too many chances, that doesn't turn it over, all this and everything else. And all I got to tell you is it's just ridiculous to me that the Steelers have the offense they have and the overall philosophy that they have. It's ridiculous to me. But there's a number of other things at work. Okay? I don't know that DK Metcalf is the guy we thought he was. Again, it's hard to tell because of that offense is so bad in terms of what it does with receivers. But the other part of it is I don't know that he's playing as well as he needs to. I don't know if he's making as many tough catches as he needs to. I don't know if he is really a guy who I think the Steelers signed for $30 million. That's a part of the problem. The other receivers on this team are just pedestrian. They're just okay. They're not good enough. The tight ends are what they are. We talk about this every single week. Yeah, Mason Rudolph wasn't great yesterday, but he's not the biggest problem on this team. Let's start from the top. Let's start from where we have to do it. And it's, you can talk about Arthur Smith all you want, but who hired him? And who wants him to do what he's doing? That's what I would like to know. Who wants him to do what he's doing? It's Mike Tomlin. He wants a conservative offense. Right? He wants a conservative offense. He wants it to be that way. All you need to know is if the Steelers wanted to open it up, they could. If they wanted to. But they might not necessarily want to because the head coach doesn't want to. And I think that is really, really the problem. To me, I think it's probably time. It's probably time to move on from this entire regime. And that's a problem, if you ask me. And I think that's the thing about it that nobody really wants to tackle, is that there is so much within the organization that is, to me, that there's so much within the organization that needs to change for this to change. And I just don't think it will. So I feel like it's a broken record. Week after week after week after week, we continue to hear the same thing and continue to talk about the same thing. And it's always important, to me, it's always important to point to the top. And the top is the organization from top down is deluding themselves into thinking they're better or bigger or whatever than what they are. And again, it comes down to they're good enough and they are good enough to be better than, the middle of the league. But at the end of the day, maybe they're not. Maybe they're actually halfway. Maybe they're not even, in the top half of the league. I mean, the reality is, if they lost twice to the Ravens, they lose to the Bills, and they lose to the Lions, 4 games. If they lose those 4 games, they'll have 9 losses for the first time. And then what? We'll be talking about a team that didn't win as many games or whatever. Non-losing seasons, all that other stuff. Look, look, you can blame Mason Rudolph for Sunday if you need to cope, but you're kidding yourself. Am I saying that Mason Rudolph is the answer at quarterback? No, I think I've made that very clear the last few weeks. What he is what I would say a modern-day Steelers version of Charlie Batch. A guy who could be a nice long-term backup who, when he plays a few games here and there, is, good enough that you can win a few games with him in there, but he's never going to be your guy. And he played well enough Sunday for them to win. He did. You want to talk about like the yardage and, yards per pass, that's a product of an offense that's ultra conservative, an offense that isn't going to, in this idea that they're not going to allow him or any quarterback really to air it out. I mean, if you watch these other teams in the NFL, they throw the ball down the field a lot more than the Steelers do. And it's because the head coach and the offensive coordinator are very, very conservative. And to me, you know what? You're never going to win on a high level if you don't get big chunk plays from time to time. You're going to be an inconsistent team, and you're just not going to be that good. So that's where I would tell you where we're at with it. We look at the Steelers. I mean, as you know, we are sponsored by FanDuel Casino. FanDuel is for all your needs. You can bet on the FanDuel app, so go to the FanDuel app, and you're going to download it. And, of course, tonight you got Monday Night Football, Carolina against the 49ers. 49ers are favored by 7. It's in San Francisco. There's a couple of different ways you can bet this. You can bet Brock Purdy, for instance, total passing touchdowns is 2, right? And that is if 2 plus is at 1 plus 180. You can bet on Brock Purdy passing yards or passing attempts. You can do Bryce Young passing yards and passing attempts. Rico Dowdell, for instance, is under for yardage rushing is over 76.5. Christian McCaffrey's over 68.5. So, there's a lot of different ways you can bet. Just go to your FanDuel app. You find all these on FanDuel Casino, the app. Download it. You can do it from your phone. You can do it from your computer. You can do it from wherever you are sitting. And so we have Monday Night Football tonight, like I said, 49ers against the Panthers. The Panthers have been a little bit better of late. The 49ers, I think, are starting to get a little bit healthy. So they have started to look a little bit better in recent weeks, although they did get annihilated by the Rams last week. But the reality is they probably should be the 7-point favorite. If you look at their next couple of games, they have a chance to maybe get on a run as they play Carolina tonight, Cleveland, and then Tennessee, so they could get back on a little bit of a run there, and then they end the season at Indianapolis and against the Bears at home. So, they could still get to 10, 11 wins and get to the playoffs. Regardless, the Steelers now have to get ready for the Bills. The Bills, I said, are a team that they're beat up. They've got lots of injuries. I think they're one of the phoniest teams out there from the standpoint of they are really 100% all, their quarterback has to be Superman. And if he's Superman, they have a chance to win. If he's not, they have no chance to win. Their receivers are very mediocre. Their offensive line is terrible. Their defense is bad. They've got a pretty good running back, but, he's running behind a bad offensive line. I mean, they legitimately need Josh Allen to be Superman. So it is what it is. I just feel like it's now, this is a team that when you look at them and look at what they are and look at who they are and where they're at, they are about as average as it gets. I'd expect that they'll be better maybe next week just because they're good at circling the wagons and all that stuff. But, boy, I just don't think that there's a whole lot left on the plate for this team when you look down the road. So, at any rate, we will do this again tomorrow. We will talk then after the game. I guess it's Sunday. We will talk about this team And, of course, all of you will hopefully enjoy a wonderful Thanksgiving. So we'll talk to you tomorrow. Goodbye.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.